Welcome back again to Cairo Local Time. As I said earlier in the interview, in the episode's introduction, we're going to be dedicating this specific segment to a special interview. We have a very interesting businessman who's joining us here today, an economic expert who's going to shed more light about where the Egyptian economy lies today. If there's any indication that is positive concerning the Egyptian economy, what is his perspective and views about how for the Egyptian economy to be at a much more better pace. I'm very much delighted to have joining me here in the studio engineer Samir Riad. Thank you very much. I believe this is the second time that we meet here on, well, not on this show though.
Right.
Thank you very much for joining me. And there's a lot of indications, reports here and there. I mean, the latest maybe is from the Minister of Planning, Dr. Hala Said, who said that according to an IQ report, there are hikes in terms of numbers. Now, I know that when you talk about business and economy, there's so many numbers that are involved. It becomes very complicated for the normal citizen, who really at the end of the day wants to know, is the economy, you know, going into a better, positive direction? And if it is, what are these indications? Because not a lot of people are feeling it. What's your perspective?
Well, if we talk about economy, we have to talk about, you know, the connection between economy and politics. And definitely we are improving, you know, our relationship to the African nation, to the European, to the whole world. There is a lot of improvement in this direction. That's why the economy is accordingly improving. You know, you see the visit of senior presidents, you know, of the world coming to Egypt, and the, you know, and of course the energy issue, which Egypt is going to possess very soon, and the increasement of the exportation and the minimizing of the importation. This is all the makes things, you know, look bright and look quite positive.
Which was actually, there was a report that we aired earlier in this episode talking about the Spanish imports versus exports. So now Egypt is importing more to Spain and exporting less. Now, when you're exporting less from any country, does that indicate that you're producing more? And then that would, you know, automatically be a result or a positive indication that your economy is on the right track?
Well, if we export more, definitely, and import less, this is a good sign.
Generally speaking.
Generally speaking.
Or if you are importing less from a certain country, but then importing more from another country with a different currency.
Well, we have to take it global.
Is that an indication? I mean, how is it?
Of course, we have to take it global. The number of the importation percentage to the exportation percentage, or the amount of import compared to the amount of export. Definitely we are importing a lot, and we need a lot for our industry, for our people here as well. That's why we have to industrialize ourselves to enable us to minimize our import. We can import certain products, certain raw material to convert it into a product with high profit, you know, or added profit. You know, this is the kind of industry which we are looking for to enable us to make, you know, our economy in a stronger position, and to enable us as well to employ our youngsters. And this kind of things is needed for our economy.
There's a lot of factors that contribute to whether a country is in a strong economic position or not. The exports and imports maybe are just one factor. But then there's the employment versus unemployment. And then there's also the underemployment, people who are overqualified for a job. How do you see that in light of the continuous efforts by the president and different institutions, ministries that are trying to support the small and medium entrepreneurship and businesses? As a businessman, how important is it for a country like Egypt to focus on these, you know, tiny little businesses and give more space and chance for people to be self-employed?
Right. I believe always that everybody has to have a job, and everybody has to have a profession. The education is enabling us to, you know, to do this in this direction. The education, or, you know, for the to industrialize the country, we need experts, we need people, we need workers, we need engineers. All of these kind of things, it has to be seen about it that the statistics of, you know, of unemployment, it will be decreased in case that we will specialize our Egyptian youngster into this direction. That's why we have to have a sort of, indications and signs, which is going to tell us if we need in this, profession so and so many people, and this profession so and so many people. I believe we need this statistic to be accurate and to be seen about it to the people, which is they are planning.
So do I understand from you that what you're trying to say, Mr. is the fact that people are very much concerned with the degrees that they earned, and then they have to wait for the traditional way to get a job. And of course, by the time you get the experience and you start getting promoted, you're either going to exceed your 35 age, where, or into your 40s, and you're not going to be earning well. So what you're trying to say is not to focus on that alone, but to actually start going out to work. Do I understand that right?
Yeah, of course, but we have to have a sort of transparency, that is the people which is, they said, okay, in this direction, when you are 30 years old, you are going to earn so and so much. And when you are that much, when you are gaining experience, you are going to earn that much. To enable him to choose, not to be, a sort of a guy which is moving from one profession to the other profession, or without, he is choosing the wrong profession. That's why the transparency is very important, that we can show him how far can he go. If he is going to be, say, this kind of profession is going to enable him to earn that kind of money. Because we are now living in a materialistic world, and everybody is entitled to see his future.
And because we're living in a materialistic world, business has become a very essential part of our lives.
Exactly.
So, and here in Egypt, I mean, I believe that there's a lot of very talented youngsters who have a lot of innovations. They are open for ideas and for adventures and for taking the risks of starting anything that could, one day become something big,
Exactly.
Even go international. But the fact that they're not finding financial support and the correct way to for legislations concerning starting up a business, even if it's on the internet, could be an obstacle.
Right.
Now, you're a businessman, and what role can businessmen like you contribute to help these young youth?
As I said, to be transparent is very important. And, the youngsters, sometimes they are not patient, They have to be a little bit patient, but providing that we show them that this patient will be paid.
What do you mean by patient?
Patient, that it means from, if he is just qualified and he learned a job, it doesn't mean that he is not perfecting it. He hasn't got the experience, to enable him to earn big money. That's why...
Now you're talking like a businessman. Like you have to apply for a job, and then they would say you need a minimum of 5 to 10 years experience. But what if someone is very talented and has potentials but does not have 5 to 10 years experience? Would you still take him?
I'll take him, of course, because there is a future for me and for him. Because this guy is going to give us...
How are you going to determine that if you don't test him?
It's not a matter of trust, it's a matter of measuring his capabilities. Everything has to be measured. And accordingly, it's going to be a decision. That it means to measure, even his capabilities can be measured and seen about it, that this guy has got a future in this direction. Everybody is, in certain direction, he can be strong, It doesn't need, the experience will give him more power and more the experience will give him, to enable him to do the job perfectly.
Yes, sir, as you were talking a couple of moments ago about how materialistic we've all become, let me tell a little bit about the younger generation. They're also obsessed with shopping and spending.
Right.
And that's why we probably spend all of our lifetime being in debt because of our credit cards that have always, sort of went to zero because of all the money that you keep spending. And then it gives does that give a fake indication to an economy of an entire country that people have money, when the fact is they don't have money, they're just buying on credit and they're just actually in debt? And it's not just here in Egypt. I think the United States, they do that as well. They spend way far more than they earn, although there's no comparison between the currencies and the GDP per person. So what I'm trying to say is that when you talk about statistics and reports, can you have accurate statistics and reports coming from, a country that is spending so much on electronic cards? And it's like having a fake kind of a budget that doesn't really exist. So you're actually on debt. But then you see that there's so much money being spent and so much goods being bought, but actually you're not really earning this money. What's your take on that?
You know, this is, I cannot compare, you know, our economy here with this kind of economy and this kind of, you know, principles.
But
you
I
know.
bet you anything, almost each one of us has at least 2 credit cards, so,
Okay.
and we use them, so, and
Okay,
we are like a millions.
But at the end of the day, it is a calculated risk, you know, for the people which they are, you know, giving them, you know, the objects, you know, to buy, you know. This is all, you know, a guy will know exactly that after so and so many months, he's going to earn that much, and this way, he's enabling him to buy this, you know, object and this kind of things. If you want to buy a car, if you want to buy whatever, you know,
Buying a car nowadays is a luxury because of the
course.
price cost. And there have been news that the prices would decrease sometime next year. Let's hope so, but it is a luxury now.
Well, it is.
It's not an easy decision to buy a car.
Well, it is a calculated thing. If we can talk about, you know, how many hours is he going to work, how many days, how many months he's going to work to enable him to buy this kind of cars, how much money can he put it aside to enable him to do it.
What if I want to start up my own business? I have this idea, I go for research, and I do my feasibility study, and I have a plan, a 5-year plan, for instance, 10-year plan, and I see that somehow if I walk through that line, plus I have passion for what I want to do, which I believe contributes a lot to how successful you can be in what you do. But then I say, well, I don't have the financial capabilities. I need someone who would be able to help me at the beginning, support me with, you know, the startup of my business. So many people would say, I don't trust you because you're still young. I'm not sure if your feasibility study is accurate. I'm not sure if this is what the market wants. But then who's going to help those young people? What if they are successful? And we've seen a lot of stories, by the way. Even if it's, you know, those little young girls who had a little small cabin where they sell sandwiches on the street, and now it's an entire street with so many, and then it's making money for them. People are buying, and it is something that looks good in the neighborhood. That's the kind of mentality I'm talking about. Why do we still have that very rigid mentality when it comes to business?
I believe that we, the government and the institutes, has to advise the youngster what kind of business they should do, you know. This should be seen about it, you know, that he doesn't put a foot wrong and not to fail.
Doesn't that require risk?
Everything has got a risk, but, you know, but there are certain businesses which the country needs it and the society needs it. And this way, you know, if we can just focus on those businesses and indicate the advantage and disadvantage of every business, and let the youngster, you know, choose, you know, this is going to be a better way than he's taking absolutely the risk, because he is, see, you know, maybe he will say this is a good business and it is not. That's why we have to advise them. We have to give them the sort of statistics which is to enable him that he can make the choices between certain businesses, you know, and, you know, again with the financing and so on, so on. The people which they can finance him, they can give him these advices, and they can tell him this is the kind of job which can be done and can earn certain money, you know. And
definitely those youngsters would need advice. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a simple,
but unfortunately,
easy thing.
they don't find it, you know, so easily, this advice. And the advice has to be from the right people and from the right organization. And, you know, he has to show him that he is sure that he is going to be successful. At least, you know, theoretically not, but practically too.
Absolutely. Well, unfortunately, our time is up for our episode. I'd like to thank you very much, Engineer Samir Riad, a businessman and an economic expert. Thank you very much for joining me here on our Cairo Local Time this time. And that brings us to the end of our episode of Cairo Local Time for this afternoon. Thank you very much for watching.